Hello everyone, Whimsy here, with a review of Planetary Annihilation, Titans. This is a game that I discovered while looking for a good sci-fi RTS, and well, to put it simply, this game is exactly what I was looking for in terms of not only gameplay and features, but the depth to the game, and how replayable every battle is. The premise of the game is pretty basic for the RTS genre. You start out gaining resources and constructing buildings to build units, then try to defeat your opponent and defend yourself from their attacks. But Planetary Annihilation takes it a step further by allowing you to construct super weapons and giant hulking mechas to, well, annihilate. There are a ton of options for you in terms of destruction, from nuclear missiles, to buildings that self-destruct a planet, and even Death Star-style planets where you have to construct these catalyst buildings to be able to dominate anybody who has the unfortunate circumstance of being on another planet. There are 5 different types of units, each with its own different uses, and adversely there are many different units per each type of unit. Each unit type must be built from its own specific factory. The factories can also construct fabricator units, which you can use to help you build more structures, or you can have them build an upgraded factory that will allow you to produce more powerful units, and also upgraded fabricators who can build more advanced structures. Doing all of this, you will find yourself constantly having to manage your resources, which I will now get into. There are 2 resources in the game, power and iron. Power can be gained through power plants, and these can be built anywhere. Iron, however, has to be built on special iron nodes that will be scattered across every planet, save for gas giants. If you run out of either, your production will slow down and you and your fabricators will build things much slower. It's a tricky thing to manage, especially when you factor in your opponent, who will be trying to nab all the iron nodes for themselves. Getting back to the unit types, as I said earlier, there are 5 different types. Bots, basically these are your infantry, vehicles, naval, air, and finally, orbital. Bots and vehicles are essentially the same, they are your land forces. Vehicles however do tend to have more armor and deal more damage than bots, and as well the vehicle fabricator unit builds structures the fastest, although bots do move much faster and can be produced quicker. Air and naval are self-explanatory, although it is worth noting that air fabricators build the slowest, so I can only see using them when either you want to make an upgraded air factory, or construct buildings without having to navigate difficult terrain. Orbital units are very important, as these units will allow you to expand your conquest to other planets, should the map contain more than one. Orbital is actually my favorite, as the Orion battleships are very strong and can dish out a ton of punishment. And let's head on over to super weapons and other late-game monstrosities. As I mentioned earlier, Planetary Annihilation offers a lot of ways in which you can defeat your opponent, many times without even having to send a single unit over. One of the many insane ways you can overkill is by placing these things called Halley engines, preferably on a small planet or moon, and then with these engines you can slam that planet or moon into another planet, destroying the both of them. You can also build Titans, which are the hulking mechas I mentioned earlier. There are 5 different Titans you can build, each having its own abilities. With the basics of the game covered, we'll get into how the game actually functions. Overall, I think it's one of the best, if not, the best sci-fi RTSs I've played so far. The way you can move units, and especially the way with which the game takes a lot of the hassle of having to constantly keep track of your unit production away from you, giving you more time to focus on actually defeating your opponents, is very much something to be taken away from this game as a definite positive. For example, instead of having to constantly come back to your factories and tell them to produce more units, you can turn on Continuous Build, which will have the factory continuously produce whatever units you want them to. This means that to increase your unit production, you can have several factories of the same unit type all producing the same or different units, allowing you to expand your army further, which you will 100% need. Planetary Annihilation does not shy away from encouraging you to try to absolutely overwhelm your opponent in numbers. Unit commands are very useful, in particular I like the patrol command, where your units will patrol around an area of your choosing. Build commands are also excellent. I like the way in which you can have fabricators queue buildings, and how you can hold down left click to have them build entire rows of a certain structure. It makes it really easy to organize everything, and I feel like these features are here because the developers share most of the same annoyances I had with previous RTSs I had played in regards to those 2 elements of gameplay common in an RTS. There are some things I would like added, however. One of the things that strikes me right away is that you can have multiple fabricators work on the same queue of structures to build, but you can't have other fabricators come in and contribute to the queue. You can only have them assist on the structure that is currently being built. This is definitely one of the things I would love to be added, as having one fabricator start on a big project. Like for example, I like to have my orbital fabricators construct jigs, which are these structures you can only build in orbit around gas giants that give you power and iron, and I usually have them cover the entire planet with them. And then I also have some fabricators construct these rings of orbital factories that go around the giant, kind of like those shipyards you see in Star Wars. But anyway, I would love it if the devs could add a way to have a unit basically follow the exact same command another unit is doing, but that just doesn't appear to be possible right now. Maybe there is, and I haven't figured it out yet, but other than that, I like how easy it is to at least have these massive armies, and massive amounts of factories producing them. Looking at game modes, there's 3 different ways you can play. There's Galactic War, which is kind of like the campaign. Then you can also just jump into a game against an AI opponent using AI skirmish, and then of course there's multiplayer, where you can either do a ranked 1v1, or join a custom match that's locally hosted by other players. Unfortunately, the multiplayer doesn't seem to get too many players, but there's almost always a game being hosted. There is one mode I don't really like, which ironically is the one I always play, only because you get to keep battling against different opponents. If you haven't guessed yet, it's Galactic War. It's not really bad, it's actually a lot of fun. Essentially you play as a certain faction that's trying to take over the galaxy, and you have to fight these other factions to win. There are a multitude of reasons this game mode doesn't really work all that well. Firstly, the way you progress and get stronger in the game mode is by defeating enemy commanders and then exploring their world for tech upgrades. These will give you anything from unit type or structure unlocks, to health or building speed bonuses, and then there's the sub-commander tech. This tech is just way too overpowered. The sub-commander gives you an AI ally to help you fight. Only problem is, the AI must have been designed by the same guys who programmed freaking Perseverance. It's just way too good, and it honestly made me feel like I should be the sub-commander. There were times where I was trying to build a super weapon to use on the enemy, and already during that time the sub-commander would have already eliminated the opponent, and it would feel like I had gone through all that work building it for nothing. I feel as though an ally AI is something interesting in an RTS, but maybe if we could have ways to somehow command the sub-commander, like maybe tell them to play either defensive or offensively, that would make it a much more meaningful experience. Another thing as well, and maybe this was just because I had the sub-commander with me, but many times the opponent felt like a pushover. Granted I was playing in normal difficulty, but I honestly didn't see the enemy AI getting any more difficult as I progressed, as most would expect. Another thing, progression is also really easy. Each faction has these different commanders that are stationed in different systems, and as you navigate throughout the galaxy, you will eventually find the faction leaders. The leader fights themselves were probably my favorites, as they had a ton of planets with which I could play around with. However, once the leader is defeated, it makes it so every single system that faction owns instantly becomes yours. And in many cases it takes no less than 4 commander battles to find and defeat the leader, when the faction itself may inhabit more than double that amount. This can really make progression in this game feel underwhelming and not really satisfying, save for that time where you finally find that one tech upgrade you were looking for. Even with a large-sized campaign, it's still very easy to beeline your way to the leader and not actually care about fighting any of the other commanders. Still, on my second run, I made a point to defeat every single commander, because in the end, the gameplay is just that much fun. So maybe the motivation's sort of there, even if it seems like you haven't really won anything. Overall, Planetary Annihilation, Titans is an RTS that I cannot wait to jump back into. I hope the devs plan on adding more content and maybe even adding an extra level of upgraded structures and units. For me, it truly is the sci-fi RTS that I had been looking for. If you've made it this far without cringing at this dumb text-to-speech voice, thank you for watching. This channel is very much young, but I hope to be making more of these review videos. I've always wanted to review video games, and really this is just a water test to see if I'm any good at it. Anyway, leave a comment on what game I should review next. I don't really care if it just came out or not, I'll review whatever people want me to. Again, thanks for watching, and be sure to keep an eye on me for more reviews in the future if you liked this one.